This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Stick around until the end of the video to learn more about a special deal they're making available through my channel. Now, over to Grant.
There are many videos on YouTube that talk about developing a fighter physique, but from what I've seen, the overwhelming majority focus only on the cosmetics, how it looks to the eye, and not what it can actually do. Sure, you can develop something that looks like it by simply lifting to grow the muscles, but the methods you would use to do that versus those that would actually give you the movement, explosiveness, and athleticism are vastly different. And when it comes down to it, what would you rather have? The chassis of a Toyota with the exterior of a Lamborghini, or an actual Lamborghini? This video will be a deep dive into some of my favourite methods for developing the much sought after fighter's physique, but in a way that creates not only the look, but also the explosiveness, speed, and power. In my last collaboration with The Pioneer, I spoke primarily how I've been recently working to develop my own physique aesthetically, but while not losing any physical ability in terms of my sport, which is martial arts with a striking focus and potentially even enhancing it. And that video was about where I'm personally at in my own journey, which is coming to the hypertrophic phase after many years of martial arts training. I also mentioned that if you wish to do something similar, but you were coming to this without that prior background of a sport or skill, then it would be wise to initially focus upon training methods that would achieve traits like speed, agility, explosiveness, etc. and generally a very high level of control over the body before you think about adding any extra size. And so that's what this video is going to be about. I'll be demonstrating some of the exercises that I've personally used to develop these traits that target the necessary muscle groups, and I'll be providing a sample training program at the end of the video. Because these types of exercises done with consistency and the right level of intensity will put a lot of functional muscle upon your body. And then if you choose, you could absolutely do a bit of weight training to add size in those areas. But in my personal opinion, function should always come first, and if you listen to that advice, your future self will thank you. It's far easier to maintain a level of mobility and movement skill when adding new muscle than it is to try and develop it from scratch with a stiff, slow, and cumbersome physique. So although this video won't be focusing upon this too much, I want to touch on the fact that as a foundation, you really should develop a solid base skill set, because there's nothing better to develop performance than simply doing the skill itself, which forces the body to adapt perfectly. And this is mainly things related to the biomechanics of striking techniques, maintaining a composed and strong posture, then using the legs to drive force through the kinetic chain, which is then rotated through the hips, the torso, and finally discharges into the strikes. And this isn't a one-time thing either, it's something that you constantly work upon. And that can then be done to greater and greater levels once you become more skilled and familiar with the base techniques of your martial art or whatever skill. For example, I stand by the idea that the first thing you should do in order to develop speed and explosiveness is, once you've got a good base, simply force yourself to perform techniques or movements with greater intensity incrementally as you train. Put simply, in order to be fast, you have to try to be fast. And this doesn't only apply to the obvious stuff like your kicks and your punches. The same goes for footwork and even the small pause moments transitioning between techniques in a combat. Doing this over time will yield crazy results if done with the right intensity, and a lot more than people think. Because most people rush to start lifting weights when their skill set isn't at a level where they're able to actually utilize the extra force that they may be able to generate. So essentially it's like preparing the body and having skill as the foundation, which will contribute to performance the most. Continually working upon that and then employing methods I'm going to be speaking about in this video here, like a supplement to bring out just a little bit more of that solid base of good biomechanics. And as I already mentioned, doing it this way will allow you to actually put that power to good use, because no matter how big and strong your back and shoulders are, it won't mean anything if you can't throw a punch with good technique. You simply won't be able to utilize that muscle efficiently. So that stuff's a bit beyond the scope of this video and I haven't got time to go into it too much here, but if you would like to know more, then head to my channel, youtube.com/GrantStevensMA. There's loads of different information about that stuff on there. So firstly, let's talk about the most important muscles utilized in martial arts. Undoubtedly, the muscles of the core take the top spot, then I would say it's the legs, followed by the back and the shoulders. And some people believe the chest is important when it comes to boxing specifically, but I would say that that's not really the case. Of course, all of the upper body muscles are going to be utilized when you throw a punch, but the chest won't be engaged anywhere near as much as the back, for instance, hence why combat athletes tend to have much greater development in their back and shoulders and not so much in the chest. So my aim with this video is to really simplify the process and demonstrate a few high return on investment activities for each of the muscle groups. A common trap that many people fall into is they're using many complicated methods to develop one attribute when really one or two would have sufficed. And this is really the secret, which is that there isn't a secret, and it's actually not as complicated as many people believe. Really, it just comes down to patience, persistence, and repetition of the fundamentals. I've done many of the same workouts and exercises without altering them much for absolutely years, because constantly looking for new methods and switching things up too often just results in lackluster progress, because there hasn't been enough repetition of those same moves and exercises. So I'll ask you a question. Can you personally do the same set of exercises time after time without getting bored? If the answer is yes, then you will absolutely achieve your goals. All you need are a few methods that work at developing the relevant muscle groups, and then you just simply repeat them a lot, incrementally increasing the level of intensity over time. And the following movements that I'm going to be demonstrating are all geared towards essentially mirroring the movements of the specific skill. So with that being said, let's get started. So the first thing that I want to speak about here, which falls in line with my philosophy of skill first combined with intent, is in layman's terms to hit something really hard and heavy repeatedly. And this is very different to how many styles, especially some traditional styles, train, where they predominantly perform techniques just in midair. And this is great to develop them, but because there's no other resistance offered, it doesn't provide the body with the necessary stimulus to grow, or at least as much as it would by hitting something. Case in point, before I started doing any weight training, I already had quite significant development in my back and shoulders through this principle, combined with explosive plyometrics, which I'll get to later in the video. It's about driving force into the target, fully using your body efficiently to produce that power. It's often what's called putting your weight behind a punch. By repeatedly performing hard and intentful techniques against a heavy object, be it a solid bag, kick shield, or even focus pads if you have a good strong pad holder, you are constantly sending a message to the innate intelligence that exists within every single one of our bodies which areas to develop. It's kind of like how a callus will form on the hands from repeated lifting. The body adapts. When performing a powerful cross or straight right, as you land on the target and feel the opposing force come back at you, your legs, core, back and rear delts are repeatedly being engaged in order to absorb that impact. The same is true for the obliques and side delts when performing powerful hook punches. Then throw kicks into the mix and you've got yourself an intense full body workout. And if you consider just how many reps you may perform during a session of say 8 to 12 3-minute rounds, it quickly becomes apparent how beneficial this will be to the development of your body. Martial arts is one of those activities where those who train correctly inevitably end up with a fantastic looking, functional and aesthetic physique, just because there's so many different elements of fitness involved. And it's one of those things I personally love so much about the discipline. It doesn't even feel like you're training. You just get into a flow state and the body becomes stronger effortlessly. Now when you're doing this, you'll want it to look and feel like you're in a movie fighting somebody. Not in the sense that it's a performance, but you'll want it to feel like you're trying to do real damage as opposed to some soft cardio kickboxing. Many people who don't understand this really struggle to comprehend their lack of progression despite many years training, and it's because they're unaware of just how much you need to push in order to level up. This certainly doesn't mean that you now throw every single technique with crazy power. It's not a black and white thing. Just as you don't want every single workout you do to fully deplete your body, but you need a sufficient portion of your training to be at this level of intensity. What I like to do when training on the heavy bag is during 3-minute rounds, I'll go 40 to 50% with the occasional heavy hit for the first 2 minutes or so. Then for the last 1 minute, I'll bring in more power shots and take it to around 80 to 90%. Focus on really driving force into the object and dominate it. It's a penetrating force where you learn kinesthetically how much to let go and then when to retract back to your guard. You don't want to be too in your head, which causes subconscious tension, stifling the movements and making you mechanical. But conversely, you need to temper that with sufficient control to maintain your composure, regardless of the power that you implement. Think controlled aggression. If you do this right, you should feel quite gassed by the time it comes to the break periods, and by the end of the workout, you should be dripping in sweat. And lastly, an important caveat to this is that it won't work unless your technique is already pretty decent. Because as I already stated, without that, you will not have the ability to siphon that energy into the correct areas of the body and actually apply that force. When your striking gets to a certain level and you can use your body effectively, hitting a bag can become a killer back and shoulder workout. So be sure to always work on those basics, because we've all seen those reckless fellows who just go hell for leather without the faintest idea of actually how to throw a punch. Don't be that guy. The muscles of the core are the keystone of martial arts prowess, and the way I like to describe it is they are like a container of energy. The stronger that container is, the more energy it's able to hold, and in our case, that results in more powerful strikes. A huge part of core development happens incidentally through simply training the skill and becomes like a feedback loop, especially when you get good and can really utilize your body to drive power into the techniques. But aside to that, without a doubt, my favorite exercises to work on the core specifically are gymnastics core conditioning exercises, because they translate so well to the movements of martial arts. Some of my favorites are the V-up, raising straight legs and arms simultaneously, then returning to the hollow position between each rep. the alternating V-up, similar to the V-up, but instead touching the foot of the opposite leg and arm. The tuck-up, from the hollow position, tucking the knees tightly while simultaneously bringing the arms in, kind of like a crunch. And then the simple hollow hold for 20 to 30 seconds. And doing these types of exercises will eventually give you the ability to do much higher level core work, like these parallel bar V-sits, which are much more difficult than the traditional leg raise due to the stabilization required throughout the upper body due to a lack of back support. Another one of my go-to exercises that targets a lot of different muscle groups of the body but is primarily core are these stance switching drills, and you perform these as fast as physically possible, and a variation of these was actually used by Mike Tyson, and they're unbelievable for increasing rate of force production and rotational strength without the use of equipment. The way to do these is to pin your arms tightly to your body so you're not able to cheat the movement using momentum or swing. Then essentially lock your body by engaging the core so that when you perform the exercise your body will move as one unit and not become disjointed, which is exactly what you want when putting power into a strike. Work towards getting these to a level where as soon as you touch down with your feet after one switch, you instantly initiate motion in the opposite direction, using predominantly the muscles of the core and legs. And this is key for making this exercise work, because if you hang around too long between the repetitions, then the muscles lose tension and won't get that necessary stimulus. This may take some time though if you haven't moved in this way before, but you can slowly work your way up to it, aiming to shorten that point of, shall we call it, zero gravity over time. These are primarily agility exercises, but another key benefit I've noticed from these is the improvement in lag time between techniques when doing combos, particularly when transitioning between hand and leg techniques. Many people can be fast with the hands, but then when they finish a combo with the kick, there's quite an undesirable lag and the combo loses steam. You want to work at the ability to have the rhythm of your combos follow continuous beats, regardless of the techniques, or at least have the option to. It's not that you'd always execute them like this, but if you train to be able to, then your overall speed and explosiveness will be much higher. Once again, through correctly producing force through strikes, your legs will gain significant incidental development through training the skill, because the legs are where all the power is primarily generated. But a fantastic method to add to that is using plyometric drills, and I've got a recommended sequence here that, if you do it correctly, you will 100% feel the next day. These exercises will boost traits such as explosive power, speed, agility, balance, coordination, and improved endurance in the legs. And once you're pretty experienced, you can progress these by the use of something like a weighted vest. The first one is a deep squat jump, but you're locking out the legs as you jump while pointing the toes for extra extension, then repeating these for 8 to 12 reps. Next, an alternating deep lunge, following the same method as the previous exercises with the straight legs. Lastly, the most brutal of all, the jumping lunge without switching sides to concentrate tension on one leg at a time. Of course, done also with the straight legs. And for those who were whining in the comments of my last video that I don't train legs in the traditional way,
stop whining!
Give this a try for a few sets and then see if you feel the same. We've already covered a lot of this in the hit harder section of the video, but we can also utilize some plyometric exercises to further boost our explosiveness. Plyometric push-ups of any kind work really well, provided that you are very explosive on the push-up part. They focus on rapid muscle contractions, which help develop the explosive strength that you need in combat sports. And they essentially teach our muscles to absorb force quickly, then push off explosively, mimicking the rapid contractions needed for striking with blinding speed. I'm a big fan of push-up jacks, where you shoot the legs out sideways as you lower down, because there's also the drop and stop part of the move, where you have to use your body to halt yourself a few inches off the floor before rapidly pushing back up again and bringing the legs back in. Another good one is just the good old plyometric push-up, where you perform like a regular push-up, but push up explosively and aim to lift your hands up off the ground before dropping back down again and repeating. And then as a bonus, full body exercise, I sometimes like to combine the push-up jack into a tuck jump burpee. So you've got that upper body work in the explosive push-up section, rapidly followed by working the legs in the jump portion of the move. And this last one could be considered more like a bonus tip, but nonetheless is incredibly useful, and that's utilizing shadowboxing to a level of intensity where it becomes like a workout. And it's a similar philosophy to how intentionally performing very powerful shots on a heavy bag becomes a workout for the back and shoulders, as I'll explain. Shadowboxing has a vast array of benefits and is really versatile, but most use it just for muscle memory. However, shadowboxing performed with intensity, where you're focusing upon speed and power, is an amazing tool to develop strength in the antagonist muscles when throwing punches, among other benefits like improving overall bodily control and balance. And that's something you don't get when hitting a bag, because quite simply, you've got a big heavy bag in front of you taking the brunt of the punch. And so there's much less of a need to consciously retract the hand. So when training shadowboxing as just a chill warm-up, your body isn't moving with enough intensity to make this really necessary. But when you throw the shots with meaning behind them, you have to use way more force in order to control them and maintain your composure. So speed and intensity is the key to making this work. It's actually a very similar concept to the stance switching drills demonstrated previously, in that the magic happens when they're done with high speed, because the relevant muscles are under a greater amount of tension throughout and not allowed to relax for too long. Then if you do this for a considerable amount of rounds, say 4 to 6, your skill-specific endurance will go through the roof and you'll be able to perform at a much higher level for longer. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, although these are only a select few exercises per muscle group, this is more than enough to develop a solid fighter-style physique, combined with martial arts training, provided you're not eating McDonald's every day. And this was the stuff I used to do before I began lifting, and I still do a great deal of it today, just on alternating days. When I did this, I was definitely smaller, but the way I trained across everything I did was aimed at improving attributes like my speed, endurance, and overall athletic performance, which I believe gave me a very nice foundation to begin the weight training from. So I will say I believe there are some limits with the amount of muscle you can gain before you start to see diminishing returns. A little is good, but too much is going to detract from those key performance aspects. But I see this like a scale, and a general guideline I give is anywhere between 10 and 20 pounds either side of your natural weight limit before you did any serious training. So my natural weight, if I didn't train, would probably fall around 140 pounds, and I'm currently around 150, so if my model rings true, then I could potentially go to around 160 before I started to see problems with my performance. But who knows, I might be completely wrong, I'll just have to wait and see. And it's quite obvious that on the flip side of that, if you go too low in weight, then you're going to lose muscle and your performance will decrease as well. For me personally, I'm quite satisfied with a slower rate of development, and I'm really not looking to pack on as much size as quickly as possible. My aim is to maintain a very high level of conditioning while I build the muscle, and in order to do that, I also do a lot of cardio work, which is inevitably going to slow down the process of getting bigger somewhat, regardless of nutritional intake. If I wanted to just get big at all costs, then I would drop the amount of activity I'm doing that significantly raises my heart rate and eat a load of calories. I would get stronger for sure, but I personally wouldn't feel good and my performance would severely diminish. And this brings me to my final point. To kind of sum up everything in this video, I would suggest the best way to ensure you're still able to perform well or maintain performance while building muscle is to make sure you balance hypertrophy work with movement, stretching, and agility so that you don't stagnate and you remain actually able to move and do something with that muscle. So the training plan is appearing on the screen now. There's also a download link in the description if you wish to try it out. And thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And for more videos of a similar nature, please head to my channel, which is youtube.com/GrantStevensMA. I cover a lot of the things in this video in greater detail there, and a lot more stuff about the technique things that I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I wasn't really able to speak about in this one. And so until the next collaboration, I will see you guys soon.
Thanks a ton for that, Grant. Now to tell you a little bit about today's sponsor, Squarespace. So as many of you will know, Squarespace is a website building platform that makes it extremely easy for anyone to build a website, literally in a matter of minutes, and with no coding skills or technical knowledge required. You can get started either by selecting from a ready-made template and then customizing it to your heart's content, or by using their new AI tools, which will streamline the entire process for you, giving you something completely bespoke. Either way, it takes minutes, meaning anyone can have a website up and running that's attractive, modern, and fully functional, and then from there you can start adding all the features you could possibly need. It has everything from a fully integrated commenting system with threaded comments, replies, and likes. It has social media integration, search engine optimization so that you can make sure your site is easy to find in Google. It has e-commerce features, appointment scheduling if you sell a service. I highly recommend that anybody build their own website. It's a fantastic way to share your passion and skills with the world, or to promote a business or project. In this day and age, I think it's extremely important and it's extremely fun. And thanks to Squarespace, anybody can get started with it. Squarespace has been a fantastic sponsor for this channel, so I highly recommend that you check them out. Head over to squarespace.com to find out more, or go to squarespace.com/Bioneer to get 10% off your first domain or website. Either way, guys, thank you so much for watching this one. Thanks again to Grant for creating this video. Thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring. And bye for now.